5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And welcome to another episode of the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast, where we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them, they struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy, such as the Deferred Sales Trust, is the best way for you to exit highly appreciated cryptocurrency, business, real estate, primary homes, so you can create and preserve more wealth or help your clients do the same. We're also streaming on expert CRE secrets as well, so we welcome everyone who's listening there. For those who don't know me, my name is Brett Swarts, and I'm the founder of Capital Gains Tax Solutions, and I'll be your host today. I'm excited to bring on some of the best in the real estate and the financial world, the law world as well, attorney world, and really focusing on helping build the Deferred Sales Trust business, as well as extend our reach throughout the country for those who are selling highly appreciated assets. So I'm excited about our next guest. In fact, he and I met years ago up in Washington, but he's out of the great state of Montana, and he's an attorney. He's a fourth generation Montanese, I think that's how you pronounce that. And he's with the Montana Law Group, and I'm going to have him tell the rest of his story, but he's an experienced attorney and legal professional, and he specializes in strategic succession and talent acquisition. And it was previously with Gravis Law, and they were able to rank one of the fastest growing law firms in the U.S., and so much more. He's been practicing for over 20 years. Please welcome to the show with me, Chad Wold. Chad, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Brett. Thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. And for our listeners getting to know you for the first time, would you give us a little bit more about your story and your current focus?
Sure. Yeah. As Brett said, I'm a licensed attorney and real estate agent in Montana, specifically in Whitefish, Montana. I've run my own law firm, managed and started multiple companies, private equity groups. As you mentioned, most recently took Gravis Law Firm to the fastest growing law firm ranked by Inc. 5000 magazine for the last 3 years in a row, and that's continuing to grow and do wonderful things. And currently, I'm focused, hyper focused more on real estate and business transactions and preparing and succession plans of all of that, both in business and in real estate purchases. We've had a huge influx in Montana with COVID purchasing of real estate, and one of the biggest issues is running out of supply on certain things that you would typically do in 1031s. So one of the biggest challenges and the role that I'm currently facing is, how do I minimize or defer my tax implications? And whether it's I'm selling my house or selling some rental apartments, or, hey, Chad, I found a hard drive in my couch with cryptocurrency that I bought 3 years ago, and apparently I can retire, but I don't know how to avoid or defer the capital gains. And so when I was happy to run into you a number of years ago at the conference, and was blown away to learn of this vehicle that existed out there that I had never heard of. And thankfully, through you, I've been able to learn it and really delve into it. And I wish I would have known about it much earlier, not only for me, but for my clients' interests. And so really, through the help of you, been able to navigate those waters and drive some serious solutions to my clients.
Love it, love it, love it. We're going to be diving into all of those things here in a minute as we explore how Chad and myself can help you navigate the Deferred Sales Trust and do it on a very high level. But before we go there, Chad, I want to take one other step back, and I want you to go back to the days, maybe the early days when you were fly fishing in high school or junior high. You're growing up in Montana. I believe we've all been given certain gifts in this life, and these gifts have been given to us to be a blessing and help to others. So some people call them strengths, some people call them superpowers, but I'm curious, what are those one or two gifts you believe you were given, and how does that help how you help and bless people today?
Well, I wear multiple hats, so it depends on which hat I'm wearing for the day to help clients or help myself. And you use the analogy of fly fishing. Growing up here, you used to be able to fly fish on a lake, and you would know who the people that owned it, or the Forest Service, or the people around it, and everybody looks out for each other, and that's really what made Montana wonderful. Then flash forward to this rush of people coming in to buy property, and while they're also coming in to share in that fly fishing on the lake and taking some of my trout, I'm able to help them out and navigate, especially being a fourth generation Montanan and having deep roots here. But I'm also a third generation attorney, so I've seen a lot of issues, whether it's on the legal side or the real estate side. But having the ability of knowing which lakes you can fish on or which lakes you shouldn't be fishing on really helps, especially when billionaires are coming in and buying up the lakes.
So like strategic thinking, you just say that's probably good in helping people navigate,
100%. Yeah.
those things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love it. So cool. Let's dive that right into the kind of the topic at hand, which is navigating the deferred sales trust, and in particular, highly appreciated assets in Montana or those that are exiting and coming to Montana. So, what would you say the biggest secret to understanding what is happening with the amount of wealth accumulation, and people looking to preserve that wealth, and for the circles that you're running with and the clients that you're serving? What's the biggest thing that, if people are trying to capture like what's happening in Montana, what would you say that is?
Well, it goes hand in hand in what's happening in Montana and also nationally. You've got 10,000 baby boomers turning 65 every single day, and this massive collection of inheritance that's happening. So regardless of what's happening in the economy, going up and down, you're going to have this continued influx of capital into baby boomers to millennials who have cash, and typically that cash will go into certain things like real estate investment. So whether they're going to sell grandma's house that they inherited in California or their primary house in California and cash out of that equity and bring to Montana, how do they preserve as much of that equity as possible, or a business that they're trying to sell, and vice versa. We have a lot of families that have been here multi-generational in Montana that are looking to sell, and they're sitting on a basis that's massive, and a farm that their great-great-grandfather bought for a donkey and a bottle of whiskey is now worth $20 million. And how do you navigate that? And how do you avoid or defer some of these tax implications?
Yeah, so let's focus on the first part of it, right, which is capital gains tax, and then we'll talk about estate tax, which is, I feel like, the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
So what are they looking at here, Chad, when it comes to, state, federal, approximately how much tax are these baby boomers, if they're going to be selling some of these houses in California or other assets in different states? What's kind of the amount that you think they might have to face in tax?
Well, depending on which state, but and what type of asset we're talking about, whether it's straight a primary residence or a business, and there's partners. So you can and depending again which state, anywhere between 30 up to high 40s.
Yep, you nailed it, right? And the depreciation recapturing can push it to 50 as well. And there's state, federal. And then there's the Medicare, Obamacare tax, right? That's been added on for investment property. So depending what nature it is, and so that's a big amount, right? And so if you could exit and defer that, so walk us through, the deferred sales trust, and for our listeners or someone who's watching this with you for the first time, how does it work? What is it, and what's some of the benefits for it?
Well, in the deferred sales trust, we look at it. Typically, what happens is the client will come to me and hizzy and say, we're thinking of selling this house, where we've been in this house for 5 years, and we bought it for $1 million, and now it's worth $5 million, and we can't walk away from that type of offer. But there's no other property around here because there's no supply, and so then we can't 1031 it. So, oh my gosh, what do we do? Do we put it in rental properties? And there's this limiting time frame that you have on the 1031, and that just seems to be the go-to for everybody that has that type of money. And typically, whether that's from their own experience, or from their financial advisors or CPAs that are saying, well, let's look at the 1031. They never look at the deferred sales trust because typically they don't know about it or aren't educated on it. So on a very high level, if we have a $4 million house, the person, instead of having to meet these time restrictions on the 1031, we can put them into a deferred sales trust, which is a third party which will the asset will be put into the third party trust, which simultaneously will be sold to the buyers. And then an installment contract is really what's going on here. And when you break all this down, this is essentially just a seller's carryback contract, which these types of principles have been around for 30 plus years. And I think the IRC 453 tax code that deals with this has been around for 90 years or something like that as well.
You nailed it. Yeah, it's really simple. The seller is just going to sell it to the trust and sell it to the directly to the buyer, but they're going to sell it on an installment, right? So they're going to carry back paper, and they're carrying back 100% financing typically, which means they haven't incurred any actual or constructive receipt. They're in a deferral state. And then the trust is ultimately going to sell it to the buyer, kind of simultaneous close, and the buyer's going to take title. And the neat part is now it's the seller's in a deferral state, and that's the essence of this. And they'll slowly pay tax as it's received back. So as far as the flexibility, Chad, on this versus like the 1031 exchange, what do you feel like is some of the things that stick out as far as what actual assets it can be used for, right? Versus the 1031 exchange, and then what kind of flexibilities it can be invested in after closing.
Well, and that's the thing that tends to really blow all of my clients' minds is it's not limited to just the real estate. It can be your business or the cryptocurrency found in the couch. And then once you tell people that, then it's a litany of questions. Well, what about this? Can I invest it in this? And for the most part, you can really do pretty much anything you want with it. Again, you're not avoiding the tax, you're deferring it. So it's going into this vehicle that's deferring it, and you're taking installment payments out of that at whatever schedule you're at. Now, once the money is in that vehicle, you can put that money to work versus a 1031 where it's specific and identified, and you can put it into businesses, you can put it into investment funds, you can buy stocks and bonds with it, buy more cryptocurrency, or put it into a new or an existing business, which is really exciting for a lot of people.
Yeah, and a couple things, right? Yeah, the investments is one of the most commonly asked questions. Like, hey, people, where can we invest the funds? Like, well, where do you like to invest the funds? And they're like, well, we like real estate, we like the stock market, we like a mixture of both. Okay, I've had some clients like, hey, we like some cryptocurrency. The only thing that we have to stay within the guardrails is not over concentrating, right? Also, everything is based upon a risk tolerance questionnaire. So the client fills that out. Then we use a third-party financial advisor. And so you have this team of professionals to help to execute this. But it is super flexible. And one of the things I love too, Chad, is there's no timing restriction, meaning there's no like forced 1031 exchange purchase. Where in a 1031, you have to buy equal or greater value. You have to identify within 45 days and close within 180. Creates this time crunch and this pressure, which oftentimes means you overpay for property. But as a reminder, 1031 exchanges only work for investment property. They have never worked for primary homes. They've never worked for cryptocurrency, or they used to work for businesses, not anymore. And they don't work for public or private stock. And so you have something called the Deferred Sales Trust, which can work for all of these. And then once the funds are there, they can be invested back into these different types of assets, which are really, really neat. So it has flexibility. It has some diversification. It has some liquidity as well. It has the tax deferral. Let's shift into estate tax, Chad, right? Because there's some ultra high net worth individuals. Talk about the estate tax challenge. What are the exemptions, and what can the Deferred Sales Trust? Let's talk about how that can help them out.
Well, I'm gonna volley that back into your court on using the DST for that specifically, and we've seen it and used it for a number of things. Typically, what happens is they get so much misinformation from their different financial advisors or accountants, and typically it's multi-party. We're dealing with multiple family members that are looking at it. But how have you used it as an asset?
Yeah, so on the estate tax part of it, it has to do with, first of all, defining the problem. So if you're worth more than 22 million married right now, or 12 million single, and any of that or all of that's inside of your taxable estate, it's going to be subject to the 40% death tax, right? So that's a big challenge. So the question is, what's your total estate, and how much is inside of the taxable estate? and are they above those exclusion amounts?
Mhm.
So, for example, let's imagine someone's worth $52 million and they have a 22 and they're married, and that 22 million married exclusion, takes care of the first 22 million, but that next 30 million, Chad, is inside of their taxable estate. So if they were to die and both, pass it on to the kids inherit a stepped up basis at 52 million. However, all 52 million, if it's inside the taxable estate, is going to be subject to a 40%, 30 million of that's going to be subject to a 40% death tax. That's about $12 million. And so the intent is to get the funds outside the taxable estate. The challenge is timing, right?
Mhm.
And execution of this. And so some people do life insurance, so they'll do gifting or they'll give it all the way to charity. But we believe the deferred sales trust is a better method because now you don't have to give it away to charity. You don't have to buy life insurance. In fact, you need to sell it to a third party buyer. So let's say it was a $30 million piece of land in Montana, right? And there were, they could sell that land before they pass away, move it outside the taxable estate, which immediately eliminates that $12 million estate tax. Does that make sense, Chad? Any questions there?
No, that's spot on. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's really something to consider. If you're ultra high net worth, it's not just your capital gains tax; it's also your estate tax, and that's something to look at. So, Chad, what do you feel like the biggest objection is when it comes to the deferred sales trust that you've heard over the years so far?
My CPA has never heard of it. Or wealth manager, and usually it's the CPA or wealth manager they've used for 30 plus years, which is great and it's served them well. But a lot of those individuals don't tend to expand their boundaries of knowledge on new and creative ways, which is fine. But this is a new and creative way that has certainly been tested and audited successfully by the IRS, or unsuccessfully for the IRS, I should say.
Yeah, it depends on what side you're on there, right? But yeah,
Yeah.
there's been over a dozen no-change IRS audits, thousands of closes, billions under management. There's also lifetime audit defense that's provided by the DST tax attorneys. And so, but you're right, that is the number one. Like, it seems too good to be true. It seems like my CPA are the people that helped me to build my wealth from 0 to 10 million or 10 to 20 million or 20 to $100 million would have known about this. And the fact is they don't, right? Or they've heard of it, but they've never actually signed the NDAs or been on the calls with us to go through it in detail. And oftentimes they're put in a position where they're not sure. And so since they're not sure, they just say no. But honestly, 9 out of 10 times, Chad, if they show up and they come to the table with their questions and we have a discussion and we have some time to prepare, they oftentimes just join us, right? That's what we've seen. And in fact, that was a story, a gentleman who went through a similar thing, and his name was David Young. He ran with a guy named Bill Gross, and these guys are some of the biggest wealth managers in the world for a company called PIMCO, and they did this for 20 years. Call these guys the Hall of Famers, and they're looking. David Young and 4 other guys were looking at the Deferred Sales Trust about 4 years ago, and they brought all of their legal and their questions, and for 2 years of due diligence, and they were very skeptical at first, but they were concerned and nervous with if it could be true or not. But they found that once they looked into the due diligence and went through it and understood it, signed the NDAs, of course, that they said, "Oh my gosh, this is great!" And they ended up joining the DST, and they can serve and help clients that are ultra high net worth. And these guys manage some of the biggest money in the world, and so it's pretty powerful when you not only have the legal track record, but you also have these big groups that are coming in and joining. So any thoughts on that, Chad, and confidence that it gives you or our listener who might be checking this out for the first time?
It certainly helps, and it's been nice that you've had those gentlemen on your podcast for me to be able to point people's direction towards that. Obviously, it provides a tremendous amount of credibility, and I know how long those guys did due diligence with you and your team, and it certainly helps anybody that's looking at it that has a weary eye. But I think the more education that we can get out there with the support teams in the financial area, from the CPAs to the wealth managers, and to get them more comfortable, will only better serve their clients. And really, that at the end of the day, that's all that matters. And so the more education we can get out there and comfortableness we can, the better, because every single client I tell it to is very, very excited about it.
Yeah. And so when do we set this type of thing up? By the way, you can learn about Chad Wold by going to montanalawgroup.com. That's montanalawgroup.com. And if you're heading that way and you're looking for a good fly fishing spot, he might have a few for you.
MontanaLaw.group.
Oh, sorry, MontanaLaw.group, MontanaLaw.group. And if you're if they're heading that way, by the way, Chad, what's like the secret spot that you don't tell the locals keep to themselves? What is it?
Wyoming.
Here it is. Yeah, exactly. It's no good. It's no good in Montana. It's no good here. Yeah, Wyoming. Just keep pointing them that way. But no, let's talk about when you would set this up, and to remind people what's a good deal size for this. Like, what's the timing, to set it up, and what would be a good deal size?
Well, obviously, the sooner the better. Just like anything, the more time, especially that I can bring a deal for you to analyze and give you and your team more time, the better. So that's rule number one. But unfortunately, life gets in the way, and clients need to make decisions quickly. So it's usually never with enough time, and always with their hair on fire. And I'm already in a 1031 and I need to get out of it. Can I get out of it? So it's usually more triage type of work than it is legal and financing. So typically the deal size, we don't really want, they're looking at a minimum of $2 million on this. And that's where it makes most sense. We can go up as high as you want. The assets can be real estate, business, cryptocurrency, anything where you're facing a potential capital gains. But the time frame, as soon as we can get it and do an analysis and get it back to them, and more importantly, approved by their financial managers and CPAs.
Yeah.
And
you nailed it. And then nailed it.
Just to add to that too,
we want to make sure that you do this before you exit the crypto, or before you exit the business, before you sell and have the cash come to you, right? And we work on a no cost, no obligation basis. We'll do an analysis for you. We'll break it down. Chad and I will strategically help to think through the pros and cons of this. And if it doesn't work, or 1031 exchange is better, or Delaware Statutory Trust is better, or an opportunity zone is better, and high five, and you don't owe us anything, but we're here to really help you navigate this. And by the way, we're not a Delaware Statutory Trust. We're a Deferred Sales Trust. And so those are a few things. Any other thoughts, Chad, before we go in the lightning round?
No, I think, like I said, there's millions of questions, and we could sit on here for 10 hours talking about them, but we'll take it.
Yeah, so here we go. So lightning round. Knowing what you know now, Chad, if you go back to your 25-year-old self, build a nugget, make sure to tell yourself to do.
Forget 1031s and use DSTs.
And buy crypto, right? Yeah.
Buy lots of crypto.
Yeah.
I didn't even know what crypto
for
is.
Sure. Question number two. What's the number one book you've recommended the most in the past year?
I read a lot of books. The one that I keep going back to is Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. I like to read it and reread it for a number of reasons. I use it from the aspect of trying to communicate with people in business, on what level do they understand it? Do they have the amount of hours? And not only that, but it's also great for parenting.
Yeah, I love that. That's great. That's great. Third question. What's your number one leadership that you strive to live by?
I believe it's a Nelson Mandela quote. And the quote is, I never lose, I only learn, or something along those lines. So I only win, or I learned from losing.
Excellent. Excellent. Next question is this. What are you most curious about right now?
Why people don't use DSTs more, to be honest with you. And I don't mean to say that flippantly. It just happens to be that in where my business is, we just have this massive group of people coming in and buying up land to the point where there's not enough land to start flipping it. And the reason is that a lot of people sitting on the land don't know that they can get out of it through a deferred sales trust. They don't want to face these capital gains. We had a client on the lake that bought his lake house for $1.5 million 3 years ago and just got an offer for $5 million. And he said no because he didn't want to deal with the capital gains. And then he came and spoke with us. And I actually had another client that was willing to pay $6 million for it. So now he's going through that process and educating himself, and more importantly, his CPA on the Deferred Sales Trust, and hopefully we'll get him into
Absolutely. And last question, Chad, after you've helped and clients you've helped and clients you've helped and built, how do you stay centered in your values? How do you stay encouraged to charge forward to reach new heights?
Put the client's interests first. It sounds a bit cliche, but when you practice that on a daily basis and from a practice standpoint, the results speak for themselves, and those results then are a direct reflection of your reputation and integrity.
Fantastic. And for our listeners who want to get in touch with you, would you mind one last time, what's the best place for them to find you?
montanalaw.group, and all our contact information is on there.
Perfect. Chad, thanks for being on the show. Thanks for using some of your strategic thinking gift to help us navigate some of the complexity of the Deferred Sales Trust. I want to encourage you to keep using that gift and keep helping people think strategically and prepare for their capital gains tax and estate tax challenges. And keep it up. And I also want to thank everyone for listening to another episode of the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast. As always, we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them, they struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax deferral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy, and using a proven tax deferral strategy such as the Deferred Sales Trust is the best way for you to exit highly appreciated cryptocurrency, business, real estate, primary homes, save a failed 1031 exchange so you can create and preserve more wealth, or help your clients do the same. Be on the lookout for the new book coming out, Building a Tax Deferred Exit Strategy. And it's a cool book. We got some really smart people in here, including a guy named Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank is in one of the chapters. And you can go to and join Chad and I too, by the way. We there's a mastermind every Friday, and we have folks on all the time talking about the Deferred Sales Trust. And you can go to capitalgainstaxsolution.com to learn more about that. Thanks so much for watching or listening to this podcast.